Hey folks, Joe with JACBC Baseball Collector here, coming back at you with another divisional preview video for the 2023 season. Today we've got the American League East. This is going to be the last one in this series on my channel. We did the AL and NL West a couple weeks ago, the AL and NL Central last week. We had the NL East yesterday, and now we've got the American League East. So really excited to do this. These obviously have been a little bit on the longer side. Maybe in the 45 or so minute range. So really appreciate anyone who sticks around for the whole thing. And if not, I have the the timestamps in there if there's a particular team that you would like to jump to. So just a quick recap of how I structure these videos. We'll go through all 5 teams in the division, do some notable offseason moves, additions and losses. We have a stud and a dud section, so highlighting a key star on the team and a potential bust or regression candidate. We'll go prospect watch, highlighting a key or top prospect on the team. And then we'll go through a kind of like bounce back, sleeper, breakout type candidate, maybe 1 or 2 of those. And then we'll do a quick over-under to wrap it up for each of those teams. All right, let's dive right in. We're going to start off with the Boston Red Sox. So as a Yankee lover and a perennial, obviously, Boston hater, it gives me, of course, joy to see that the Boston Red Sox have not really put a particularly competitive roster together, and that they seem to be basement dwellers in this division for yet another season. But let's actually take a look at this team. So in the offseason moves department, they were pretty busy on both sides of this thing. So addition-wise, they added Masataka Yoshida coming over from Japan, so they're going to slot him right into the middle of the order. He's a pretty decent hitter coming over from there, very high on base percentage guy. So we should expect to see a lot of him playing left field for them. They had Justin Turner, who's going to miss a ton of time for taking a ball to the face. He was a pretty big signing for them, but he's obviously not going to be a factor for a bit. Then other guys, Adam Duvall, Adalberto Mondesi, Jorge Alfaro, Corey Kluber, who's going to be their starting opening day starter, which will just kind of tell you everything you need to know about that rotation. Kenley Jansen, and then Hoy Park on the lower end side. On the losses side, big loss was this guy right here, Xander Bogaerts. I showed off this card that I had recently picked up at my LCS when we did our Padres preview video, because he's obviously the big addition that the Padres made this offseason. But he's going to be a big loss for the Boston Red Sox. He was, the centerpiece of that infield, playing shortstop for them. Obviously, him and Devers, and now he is gone because they were unable to retain him. They did not re-sign him this offseason. They also lost Matt Barnes, Connor Siebold, Michael Wacha, Nate Eovaldi, J.D. Martinez, who's kind of a notable name, even though he's been in decline. Rich Hill, Matt Strahm, fellow collector, Tommy Pham, and Eric Hosmer. So some fairly notable names in that list. Nobody that really jumps off the page as a big splash guy, obviously, other than Xander Bogaerts, but definitely some notable names there. All right, moving into the stud and dud category, we'll start with the stud, of course. And that's going to be none other than Rafael Devers. I mean, this one's obviously pretty obvious. They don't have a whole ton of star power left on this team. But we got Raffy, Big Stick Devers, Mr. Big Scoops himself. He is the guy in Boston now. This is his team all the way. He signed a monster 10-year, $300+ million extension recently. So, they got rid of Bogaerts. They got rid of Betts. They got rid of all kind of their big players. But Devers appears to be the guy that they want to build around. This is their guy. And frankly, he really deserves that extension. He's been a tremendous player. But the question, of course, becomes, what do they do now? What do they do to build around him? It's actually kind of amazing. This will be his 7th year in the major leagues. I can't believe he's been in the league so long. He's still so young. He's only 26, but he's been in the league an incredibly long time, such a young age. But he's been a top 3 defensive third baseman since the start of 2019. So he came in, I think, in 17, 18. I think he had rookie cards in 17. I believe this is a 17. Or 19 or 18. He had rookie cards at 18. I think he made his debut in 17. But starting from 19 on, the guy's just been unstoppable. He gets better every single year. He's an offensive powerhouse. He's a pretty good defender. I know he has the nickname Big Scoops. But I think, he's definitely more of an offensive player when actually looking at his metrics. I know he kills my Yankees. He seems to always hit home runs off of Garrett Cole when I watch them. But, this guy is going to be, the centerpiece of this team. And he's just entering his prime years. Those prime years are usually 26, 27, 28, like that range when guys hit their absolute peak. And I think that he's just entering those seasons, obviously. So I mean, this year, who knows? The roster and the team around him is kind of weak, so he might not get a ton of pitches to hit. But he's just so talented that he definitely can do a lot with a little. All right, on the dud side, Boston Red Sox dud is going to be Trevor Story. So they gave him a big contract heading into 2022. They gave him $140 million before the 2022 season. He was coming over to play second base temporarily. Maybe they knew they were moving on from Bogarts. He was going to become their shortstop. And he's just done. It's just been basically 2 lost seasons. He missed half of last year, more than half of last year. When he was on the field, he didn't really hit a lick. I think he had one hot streak maybe in May. But he really was just like particularly unimpressive. He's going to miss, I think, all of this year with another injury of some sort. So 2 just totally lost years out of the first. I don't know if it was a 6 or 7 year, whatever they gave him. But it's really a bad, very clunky start for Trevor Story after a big money contract coming over to this team. So, it is always tough, obviously, bringing a guy in from Coors because you never know how things are going to translate from that Coors offensive production to another stadium. But I don't think his problem has even really been the fact that he doesn't have the Coors effect anymore. He hasn't been able to stay on the field, and it's obviously unfortunate. But it looks like this is going to be the start of a pretty rough go of it for Trevor Story with the Red Sox, and I think he's going to be this is going to be a big bust of a contract for this team going forward. All right, prospect to watch here. They have the 23rd ranked farm system, so not particularly strong in the bottom third of the league. They tend to do this where they fluctuate up and down, the Red Sox. They'll have a really strong system, graduate a bunch of guys, drop down, or they'll unload their system, trading for veterans, other things. That's been, that was kind of the Dave Dombrowski approach to things they took a number of years ago, so I think they're still trying to rebuild that system. But the prospect to watch, obvious one for me, is Marcelo Mayer. We got this nice Bowman Chrome from earlier this year, 2022 Bowman Chrome, a nice aqua number to 125 parallel there. So Mayer's the 11th ranked prospect on average across all the major publications. So that's Baseball America, Baseball Prospectus, and MLB Pipeline. He's the best shortstop prospect in the game, not named Anthony Volpe. And we'll get to Anthony Volpe a little later in the video, obviously, when we cover the Yankees, because that guy's just been out of this world of late. But he was the number 1 chase in 2021 Bowman draft. So he was a top pick in the 2021 MLB draft. He was actually the 4th overall pick, but considered perhaps the best all-around player in the draft. He was considered the best hitter in the draft and the best defender in the draft, on both sides of the ball. Then, obviously the Pirates ended up going with Henry Davis. The other 2 teams in front of them, I think the Rangers and the Tigers went with, Leiter and Jackson Jobe. So they went 2 pitchers. And then Mayer fell into the Red Sox lap at 4, which, you can say, how's a guy steal at 4? He was a top 5 pick, but I mean, he probably should have been the 1st overall pick. So being able to get him at 4, I think the Red Sox were probably jumping with joy, to be perfectly honest. So, he's, like I said, elite on both sides of the ball. He had a very strong year in A-ball last year, should start in Double-A this year. And obviously now with the shortstop position open, with Xander Bogaerts gone, Trevor Story's future a little bit uncertain. I mean, he should be on the fast track to becoming this team's shortstop. I don't think he's probably going to get there quite this year. Let him get through Double-A, let him get through Triple-A, even if he plays at both of those levels this year. But next year, I mean, this position's got to be his. They'll probably have to bump Story back over to second. And this position is just going to become Mayer's, because this kid is truly special. He's a really, really nice player. All right, I got a sleeper candidate here. I don't have any bounce back or breakout guys, but I do have a sleeper, and that's going to be Brian Bayo. So the Sox, in my estimation, have a pretty bad rotation. I mean, maybe bad's the wrong word, but unreliable probably is a better word for it. They're very injury prone. I mean, you have Corey Kluber, who's in the twilight of his career, misses a lot of time with injuries. You have Chris Sale, who hasn't been able to stay healthy for what feels like 5 years or so. Nick Pavetta's decent. I forget who some of the other guys are, but some of the reliable starters like Eovaldi and others are gone now. So they're going to rely on some of these, lesser names and more injury-prone names. So a guy like Bayo, who's, an up-and-coming pitcher, a young pitcher, coming up through the farm system, got a little cup of coffee with the team last year, I think is just going to get a lot of opportunities. As long as he can stay healthy himself. I think he's battled some injuries as well. But as long as he can stay healthy himself, I think that this is going to be a guy who gets a ton of opportunities, and with those opportunities is going to get a chance to really shine. So he's one of these typical nasty kind of quote unquote stuff guys. Um, he's had a really impressive spring. Last year, he was up with the team, like I said. He wasn't great statistically. He had a 4.71 ERA, but he actually had a 2.94 FIP as fielder independent pitching, which takes into account his strikeouts, walks, and home runs, tries to minimize everything else. So there's obviously a big dispersion there, and obviously that FIP being so much lower than his ERA suggests that he has some upside, and he has the ability to maybe bring those two numbers together, maybe settle in into kind of the 3's ERA, as long as he stays within himself, keeps his composure, keeps his control, keeps his command. But he's going to strike out a ton of batters, and he seems to have, like I said, that quote-unquote stuff that could make him into a nice pitcher. So if he gets some opportunities, I think he could really take the bull by the horns this year. All right, over-under time, 76.5 wins. They won 78 last year. I mean, I'm certainly drinking the Red Sox haterade. That should come as no surprise. I'm going under 76.5 for the Red Sox. The pitching is just so bad and so injury-prone. I can't buy into them at all. Turner and Story are going to miss a bunch of time. Yoshida, they're looking for him to be the middle of the order guy. I mean, whoever knows with these Japanese players coming over. I mean, the hitters are a little bit more reliable than the pitchers in the first year, but that's a question mark. So to expect so much out of him is tough. There's just a lot of question marks with this team, and I don't know how they possibly got any better. So I'm going to have to say there's just no way that this team got better, and they're going to be under that 76.5 number. Probably having a season even worse than they had last year, in my view. All right, next we have a team I'm pretty excited about, pretty excited to talk about, pretty excited to watch. A team that's maybe within a couple of years is going to be, the new Houston Astros, right? The way that they're building from within with this young talent, similar to kind of what Houston did in like 16, 17, and beyond. And that's the Baltimore Orioles. So in the offseason, the one knock on the Orioles right now is obviously they don't spend a ton of money. Their ownership, there's issues with their ownership. They didn't really do much this offseason. They could have taken a really nice step after overachieving last year and with some of these young stars coming up, these young studs coming up. But they had a very quiet offseason. They brought in Kyle Gibson to be one of the top guys in their rotation. That's probably the headliner of this offseason. They brought in James McCann, backup catcher. Michael Givens back into their bullpen. He was a guy who was there previously. Daz Cameron, Cole Irvin to be in the rotation. Adam Frazier to play infield. They lost Rugi Odor, Jordan Lyles, Jesus Aguilar, Matt Harvey, and Robinson Chirino. So nobody that jumps off the page to you really on either side of the ball. Gibson probably being the most notable. When we look at their star, it's going to come, again, as no surprise to anyone who's watched any of my videos, it's got to be Adley Rutschman. And we got this really cool American pride out of Donruss when he made the collegiate national team. You got the pink with the fireworks. I just love these kind of cards. So, people have heard me drool over Adley Rutschman in video after video. I mean, I can't say enough good things about the guy. He's this big switch-hitting catcher. He actually led the team last year with 5.2 WAR. And he didn't get called up until the end of May. So that's just really, really impressive. Obviously, if you do that over a full season, you're talking about, 7+ WAR, maybe 7.5 over a full season, which would be it's just a tremendous rookie season. He would have won the Rookie of the Year in a world without, where Julio Rodriguez didn't do what he did last year. Don't need to go through all the accolades again. I ran through them all in my Series 1 preview video, and I previewed the top 10 best rookies, which I did have Adley as the number one best rookie in that class in my estimation. But we don't have to go through it all again. He has all the college accolades, all the awards, all the stuff that he did at the minor league level, what he did as a rookie last year, the national team, so on and so forth. All these things that he did. I mean, he's just the whole package between his on-field performance, his attitude, his leadership skills. This is just the kind of guy that you use as a centerpiece and build a franchise around, build a potential dynasty around. So, I think he's going to be a perennial MVP candidate. That's not particularly common for catchers, obviously, because they don't play, quite every single day. But I think this guy has that kind of level of talent and that level of drive, and he's just that special that even as a catcher, he's going to be a guy who's in that mix every single year. All right, dud. Not a full-blown dud, but I'm going to go with Cedric Mullins, and this is actually an advanced stat parallel, one of the probably worst parallels in the history of the hobby. Just such a silly parallel, but still one that some people like. But like I said, I don't think this is a full-blown dud situation, but I think he's being a little overrated. I think he's being viewed as kind of that guy from 2021. I think people still see him as that guy. When he had a 137 OPS plus, he had a 5.7 WAR. I mean, really, really strong, impressive All-Star season in 2021. But if you look at 2020, which I know a lot of people throw in the garbage, I tend to do that as too. But then also 2022, it suggests he might be more of like a league average hitter. You look at his numbers; they were much more in line with league average than this kind of above average, really all-star caliber guy that we saw in 2021. But you know, he's a good defensive player, so he has that. He's probably gonna bounce some more. And I don't know why I'm getting all this kind of glare. He's gonna get a nice bounce in his WAR value based on his defense. But I think the bat is going to lag behind. I think he's going to be average. He's an adequate player for sure. He's a good piece on this team, probably hitting leadoff, whatever he's going to be doing there. But I just think he's going to be a bit over. I think he's being a bit overrated, and that's tough. I mean, he's not quite the guy he was in 2019 when everyone was making fun of him. They were pulling nothing but Cedric Mullins and Ryan O'Hearn autographs out of every product because he signed a million different things. But he's also not the guy from 2021 where everyone was like, oh my God, Cedric Mullins has arrived. I think it's somewhere in the middle. He's probably more like a league average player, which is fine. I mean, you need guys like that. But he's just being a bit overrated in my view. All right, Prospect Watch. They got the third-ranked farm system, according to Keith Law at The Athletic. Really, really solid farm system. I've seen some other places. I think MLB Pipeline had them as the number one ranked farm system, which is not surprising at all. They have the number one ranked prospect in the game with Gunnar Henderson. They have a top 10 prospect, the number one ranked pitching prospect in the game, or maybe number two ranked pitching prospect in the game with Grayson Rodriguez. I'm considering both of those guys part of the big club. They're going to break camp with the team. They're going to be starters on this team for the entire season. So since that is the case, the prospect I'm going to highlight is the next guy up, and that's the number one overall pick from last year, Jackson Holliday. So he was, like I said, the number one overall pick last year. He is the son of Matt Holliday. I'm sure people remember him, 7-time All-Star, spent time with the Rockies, the Cardinals, the Athletics, the Yankees. Might have had to stop somewhere else, but I think that was it. So this guy's obviously got the pedigree. He's the 12th ranked prospect on average already. Not surprising, obviously, being the number one overall pick, but with some of these guys graduating out of the top 10, you're probably going to have, at least half of the top 10 graduated into the majors at some point this year. If this guy has any kind of production whatsoever in his season this year, he's going to propel himself right into the top 5 amongst prospects. So, he doesn't really have any big sample size in the minor leagues yet, so there's nothing really to talk about there. He was drafted out of high school, so he's got a lot of room to grow. He's going to add some muscle, add some strength, just continue getting better. But you could already see it. Anytime you watch this kid, you can see truly how special he is. And obviously he has that major league pedigree with his dad, having been a very, very good major league player. So, the top chase from Bowman Draft this past year, and there's a good reason why. All right, we got a breakout candidate coming up. So we have a breakout candidate and a minor sleeper to close out for the Orioles. The breakout candidate is going to be Ryan Mountcastle. You probably have sensed the trend, if any of you have actually watched all these videos, where I'm liking a lot of these guys from that 2021, hobby rookie class that haven't really panned out and done a whole lot yet. Mountcastle's a guy I've liked from the beginning. He had a really similar season last year to his 2021 season. But he did take a small step back in terms of power. A lot of that's due to the fact that Camden Yards, the Orioles pushed the fences back, especially in left field, and Mountcastle being obviously a power-hitting righty, that gobbled up a handful of his home runs. So I think a key for him is going to be not trying to chase that long ball. I don't think you should try to really, slug it out, try to chase that extra distance to try to get it over that fence. But take the doubles where you can. And I think that, a lot of his peripherals, as they call it, some of his more advanced metrics, suggest that a better year is coming. Just so long as he's not chasing too many bad pitches. He does have a high outside of the strike zone swing rate. But if, I think a bit of that is probably, related to the fact that he was trying to really muscle balls out. And if he can avoid making that mistake, I think that he's in for a really nice season, maybe with a ton of doubles, if not a nice big uptick in home runs and power. All right, minor sleeper. it's going to be Kyle Gibson, who I mentioned at the top as their big notable addition. So probably the only time a Kyle Gibson base card from 2023 Series 1 is going to be in a top loader. But, obviously for the video, I had to get it encased here. So guy's a crafty veteran. I think he's in his mid-30s at this point. He holds a career array of 4.5. So nothing that really jumps off the page at you. He had a pretty crummy year last year. I think he had like a 5-something ERA. Yeah, he had a 5 ERA with the Phillies the past couple of years. But it's a really tough park to pitch in. Citizens Bank Park is very difficult to pitch in. It's a big hitter's park. Now he's moving over to Camden Yards, obviously, which is becoming more of a hitter's park, or more of a pitcher's park, I should say. Obviously with the fences pushed back and all that. So I expect that he's going to give up some less home runs, which will obviously help quite a bit with some of those ERA numbers. He's a big ground ball guy. He's an innings eater. So obviously, if the new shift rules don't kill him with inducing so many ground balls, I think this is a guy who could provide unsexy value to a team. He's not really an ace. He's not a real ace. He's probably going to be their quote unquote number one starter, at least until Grayson Rodriguez proves himself to be this team's de facto ace. But he's going to start for them and just eat up innings and be valuable in that way. So a nice little sleeper candidate that I think will be a valuable pitcher for the Orioles in this kind of transition year that they're going through. Over under 77.5 wins for this team. They won 83 last year. Like we already mentioned, they definitely overachieved. They probably were a little ahead of schedule. I don't know that they will be quite that good as they were last year, but I also don't think that they're 6 games worse. I don't see how this team got significantly worse than they did last year in any capacity. I could see them floating around plus or minus a couple games from 500, but probably not 77 or below. So I'm going over 77.5. The pitching does scare me a little bit. For sure. The lack of offseason moves was disappointing, but I could certainly see this team winning 78 to 81 or something along those lines. All right. Next up, we have the team that's occupying the middle ground in the East, and that's going to be the Tampa Bay Rays, or the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, as they were formerly known, but I still sometimes call them by accident. They had a fairly quiet offseason, many more losses than they had gains, or additions, I should say. They brought in Zach Eflin. That was the only really notable addition that I saw. They lost, though, G-Man Choi, Javi Guerra, J.P. Firesen, Corey Kluber, Kevin Kiermaier, David Peralta, Ryan Yarbrough, Nick Anderson, Mike Zunino, Chris Archer. So, again, nobody that necessarily jumps off the page at you, but some valuable pieces and different role players that they've had for a number of years on this team. So, definitely this should be an interesting year for the Rays. Stud, I'm going with my guy, Wander Franco. I know a lot of people are down on him. I think this scratches on the top loader, too. There's a little schmutz on this top loader. I probably should have picked a cleaner one. But I think the scratches on the top loader, not the card, fortunately. You can kind of see it goes up past onto the penny sleeve, so that makes me feel pretty confident. But I'm still a big believer in Wander Franco. People are down on him, just given he missed some time last year. It felt like his season was underwhelming, especially, even when he played, not just the injuries. But if you actually look at his first 2 seasons, so obviously he came up, made his debut in 2021, then he had a partial season, the injuries aside in 2022. He's hit 282 with 13 homers, 10 steals, a 122 OPS plus, and 6.1 WAR in 153 career games. So between 21 and 22, he's played 153 games, which is basically 1 full season's worth between the 2 years, and he's accumulated over 6 WAR already. Pretty much every guy on the planet would take that level of production before they turned 22. It's easy to forget because we've been talking about Wander so long. Obviously, we have his first Bowman Chrome here from 2019. We've been talking about him for so many years. It's really easy to forget this guy is just going to be turning 22 now. So, only 19 players in the history of the or I shouldn't say the history of the game, 19 players since the strike, so after 1994, basically the last 20 years, or 30 years, the last 30 years, have accumulated more WAR by the time they turned 21 than Wander. So there's 19 guys, and then there's him, number 20. So he's 20 out of thousands of players that have come through the majors in that time that have accumulated 6+ WAR before they turned 22 years old. So I think this guy's special. I think he's going to put a healthy season together. Very confident in that. I think he's super cheap right now. I think people are down on him. And when Wander Mania resumes, he got kind of overtaken by Julio and some of these other guys. When Wander Mania resumes, watch out because this guy is going to propel himself into the top 5 or 10 players in the American League, in my view. All right, dud, potential regression candidate for the Rays. I think some people are going to be surprised by this. I'm going with Randy Arozarena, Randy the GOAT, as the Up North collectors like to call him. This is kind of just a gut feeling, but it is backed up by some things that I think are a little strange. Obviously, this guy had some real heroics in the postseason a couple years ago. Had a monster postseason when he was first coming up. He had some real heroics in the WBC playing for Team Mexico recently. He has that flair, that flash for the dramatic or whatever that phrase is. I'm sure I got it wrong there. I totally butchered it. But like he's just like one of those guys where he just finds a way. And his first 2 full seasons, 21 and 22, were particularly strong. He had really good numbers. There's no way around it. But the thing that jumps out at me looking at his stats from last year is he hit 50% of his balls on the ground. I think more than 50% of his balls on the ground. So that's a very, very high ground ball rate, like amongst like some of the highest in the league, I think. But he had a 343 batting average on balls in play, so his BABIP. That is incredibly high. I mean, league average is around 297, 298, right around 300 is the average BABIP. That's what you should expect a guy to have in a normal season. To be 43 points above that with 50% of your balls hit on the ground, even if you're hitting the ball incredibly hard, which he does, he hits the ball pretty hard. He has good exit velocity, he hits the ball hard. Suggests that there was some luck factor involved here. I mean, he had a lot of balls see their way through into the outfield. That you could really expect to come back. Even with some of the shift rule changes, I would expect if you see that even come down 20 points, let alone all the way back down to the league average of around 300. I think you can expect to see this guy regress a little bit this year. He's not going to be a bad player. I mean, he's still probably a 2020 guy. He's got the power and the speed. He's going to do all that stuff. I just think that his season might not look quite as impressive as we've kind of come to expect for Randy Arozarena. All right, Prospect Watch. Another really strong farm system here. 5th-ranked farm system. No surprise there. Tampa develops them as good as anybody. They know how to identify talent. They know how to go out there and find guys. And that's why I picked this guy. He's actually not the top prospect in the system. Taj Bradley is. But I found his story to be really interesting, and he's probably a little bit more of an interesting guy to look at. And that's Curtis Mead. So he's the 28th ranked prospect on average across all those different publications. And this is a guy that the Rays went out and found in the Australian Baseball League. So, not exactly a place you think of when you talk baseball. Australia. We've had, some Australian guys. I think Liam Hendricks might be Australian. Dave Nielsen, if you remember him from back in the 90s with the Brewers, he was Australian. But not really a place that produces baseball players with any kind of, frequency. So they went out and they found him. They go, wow, this guy could flat out hit. And he came over here. And he's done just that. He's hit at every single level. He projects to be a 300 hitter, most likely, even in the majors. He could hit double-digit homers. He could steal double-digit bases, even as a first baseman. I mean, he's incredibly well-rounded. He's got the power and the speed combination. Like I said, he'll probably end up playing first base long-term for the Rays. And, just, again, another really interesting story. Really interesting player, really good player. And, with the way that the Rays kind of develop prospects and the current makeup of their roster, I wouldn't be shocked if we see him get his way up here relatively quickly. If he impresses at AAA this year, he probably could break into the bigs. I don't think he's going to break camp with the team, but I really expect that he's going to break himself into the bigs before long. All right, bounce back candidate from last year. Guy had a pretty down year last year. I'm expecting a big bounce back from him, and that's Brandon Lau. So not to be confused with Nate Lowe. Brandon Lau, who actually they both played on the Rays together at one point. Brandon Lau from 2019 to 2021 played 287 games. So obviously remember that 2020 season was truncated. And he had an 870 OPS plus with a 130 or 870 OPS with a 138 OPS plus over that span. Really tremendous player, well above average offensively. And then last year, he just regressed right back to league average. Guys have years like that. He was battling some back issues. Guys have those kind of blips in their career where things, where they take a step back. But all signs point to nothing else really changed. He's still that same guy. He still has all the same, advanced stats. His exit velocity, all that fun stuff that people like to talk about. We're in line with his norms, even despite the health issues. So if he can put a healthy season together, which he hasn't shown any reason thus far this spring that he won't, if he could put that kind of healthy season together, I would really expect him to regain that form where he was like a 5 or so WAR player. And at 5 or so WAR, I mean this guy is squarely within kind of the top echelon of second basemen in baseball. All right, sleeper time. It's going to be Jeffrey Springs. So he's a guy who actually broke out last year. He's another one in this camp. I've had a few guys like this that I've highlighted across these videos. He was a guy who broke out last year, already kind of had his breakout season, but I feel like people just like still aren't really talking about him or still don't really know that much about him. And he's actually someone that got identified in the Professor Collector group. I talked about this on one of my mail days as you know the guy did a giveaway where he had this collage of cards. He was like, I picked up all these cards. One of these guys was actually on my fantasy team last year, and I think he was I'm hoping to pick him up again this year. And I randomly guessed Jeffrey Springs, and I won the giveaway because I saw the Jeffrey Springs card, and I was like, I feel like all the others were just too obvious. They were too good of players, and I knew that Springs had just had himself this really nice year that a lot of people were underestimating. They didn't realize it, and lo and behold, I actually had this Jeffrey Springs rookie card sitting in my like random rookies box, and I'm gonna have to obviously upgrade him to kind of the mid or even top tier rookie box at this rate, kind of the way he's performed. So to get into a little bit of how he actually was, he started out as a reliever. He made the transformation to a starter early last year, and he had this tremendous season. He had a 2.46 ERA. He pitched 135 innings. He's dominating spring training this year. He has a 16-1 strikeout to walk ratio at the point of making this video, and he's given up no runs. He's given up no runs in his entire spring thus far, and we're almost at opening day. Obviously, I'm not one to overanalyze spring training stats, but that's really freaking good. That's really good. So he just seems absolutely poised for another huge season. He could, emerge as the potential ace on this team. I'm really impressed with what I've seen about this guy, what I've read about this guy, everything about him. Seems super impressive, and it's really nice to see that the Rays are just continuing to produce tremendous pitching and find these hidden gems, that lead to these successful seasons year after year. All right, over under time. So I've done nothing but just laud everything that the Rays do and laud their players, except for I guess maybe Randy Rosarina in this video so far. But looking at the over under 88.5, they won 86 last year. I think I'm gonna have to go with the under. They always seem to manage to be a really competitive team, to exceed all expectations, especially mine. I kind of have this mindset going into every year that like they can't possibly keep doing this, and then they just do. So this is probably a bad bet. Like I'm probably just flat out wrong here, but I just don't feel that this team got significantly better from last year. I think they maybe even got a little worse, though the one hedge there is that they probably should get a lot more production out of guys like Wander and so forth, a better season at a low. But I don't love the pitching outside of Springs. I know there are some other guys, and they're not coming to mind right now, but I just don't think that they got significantly better. So when their over-under number is above the win total they had last year, I'm just having trouble seeing it. So I'm going to go with under 88.5. All right, next up, we have the Toronto Blue Jays. So these guys were a really popular pick to win the East last year. A lot of people really like them quite a bit, similar to the Chicago White Sox in the Central. They were kind of the sexy pick for both divisional wins, AL pennant, and even World Series in some regards. But they obviously, didn't quite reach that status. But maybe this year is the year. So in terms of their off season, they made some pretty notable moves. I would say they definitely were active. Among the biggest was this trade right here, where they acquired Dalton Varsho and gave up Gabriel Moreno. So you have Moreno from, rookie from 2023, Dalton Varsho, nice. I don't even know what this, there's so many different prism parallels. I don't even know what this one is called. But they basically went catcher for catcher. I don't know if Varsho's actually going to catch for them or not, because they have obviously Alejandro Kirk, who's a pretty nice catcher. He'll probably play some outfield for them. He's actually incredibly speedy, Varsho, for a guy who was a catcher. So he's a very dynamic player. He's proven himself to be pretty solid. Like another guy who I think's father was a major league player, Gary Varsho, maybe was his name. So definitely has the pedigree, and he's a guy who's going to fit into this team really well. But as far as other acquisitions go, as far as other acquisitions go, they had a Chris Bassett from the Mets, so a pretty nice pitcher there. Kevin Kiermaier, defensive specialist, center fielder, probably one of the best defensive center fielders, if not the best in the game. Eric Swanson on the pitching side, Brandon Belt, who's kind of starting to get to the back end of his career, and Chad Green coming over from the Yankees. They did lost Teoscar Hernandez, who was a big offensive threat for them. Lourdes Gurriel, he was the other guy in the Dalton Varsho trade. So along with Moreno, he went over to the Diamondbacks. Ross Stripling they lost, and Jackie Bradley Jr., who I didn't even know was playing for the Blue Jays at any point last year. Looking at their stud, so the Blue Jays stud, to me, it's got to still be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So I've loved this guy for a long time. Dating back to, I guess it was 2016, I went down to Yankee spring training with my dad. We spent a couple of days at the minor league facility watching those guys. We saw Judge and all those guys when they were still in the minors before they made it big. And one of the like minor league games that they played at those fields, away from the big main spring training field that the big league team played at, was between the Yankees minor league guys and the Blue Jays minor league guys that came over to play a spring training game. And Vladdy was there. He was probably 16 or 17. He still had braces on his face. I mean, he was truly a kid. He still had some of his baby fat going. Obviously he's not a skinny guy now, but he's a big, buff, professional athlete now. But you could just see it. Even then, you could hear the thunder in his bat when he made contact with the ball. You could see his dad's swing in him. You could see it from the very, very beginning that this guy was special. And I'm a huge believer in him. Obviously he had the MVP caliber season in 2021. He led the league in homers. He had an OPS over 1,000. Obviously he would have been potentially the MVP if Shohei Ohtani didn't do what he does pretty much every year. It's going to be hard to contend with him, obviously, unless you do something like Judge did last year. Last year he took a little bit of a step back, but he still had a really good season. He hit 30-plus homers. He had nearly 100 RBIs. It's just when you measure it against that 2021 season, it looks like he kind of had an off year. But really, in the grand scheme of it, he had a tremendous year. So I think that, the really amazing thing about Vladdy is he still hasn't even really hit his stride. He's still incredibly young. How old is he even now? He's probably only 23 years old. I mean, he was born in 99. So, yeah, he's going to be 23, 24 years old this season. He hasn't even hit his stride. We talked about those prime years being from, 26 to 28. He's not even there yet, and he's already having MVP caliber seasons. I think this guy has a lot left in the tank. I think he's going to be a staple for the Blue Jays for a long time. Obviously, unless he hits free agency and signs somewhere else. I don't think he signed a big extension or anything, but I'm as big a Vladdy guy as you'll find. I love Vladimir Guerrero. He's not a huge guy I collect huge, but from a baseball standpoint, I really, really love him. Definitely a guy I think is going to be in the MVP mix once again. Again, it'll be hard to beat Ohtani just because of what he does, but he'll be in that conversation for sure. All right, dud candidate. Don't have a card for this guy. Seems to happen maybe once a video or so, but it's going to be Jordan Romano. He's haven't talked a lot about relief pitchers or closers in these videos. Probably should have spent more time talking about bullpens, but they're not really the sexiest or most interesting. But Jordan Romano, for those who maybe aren't super familiar with him, has been one of the better relievers in baseball for the past few years, without a doubt. But the thing about relief pitching is it's an incredibly volatile position, right? So he's, that's just, amongst your normal guys. Even your good players. I mean, unless you're a Mariano Rivera, relief pitching goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It's just the way it is. So, when you look under the hood a little bit at Romano, especially how he pitched last year, some of the lights start flashing a little bit. So, and you start seeing potential regression. His strikeout rate fell pretty notably last year. His hard hit rate and his average exit velocity spiked up. I love talking about hard hit rate with these guys. It's one of the big metrics that I'm into. And he outperformed his expected FIP by almost a full run. So when you look at that and you see, not striking out as many guys, inducing more hard contact, outpitching his peripheral metrics, you start to say, okay, this guy might be primed for a regression. Doesn't mean that he's not going to rack up a bunch of saves. He's probably still going to be the closer. He's probably not going to lose the closer's role. This is a good team, so statistically, saves-wise, he's still probably going to get a bunch of them. But I just don't think he's going to look quite as dominant or be quite as dominant as we've seen him be in the past couple of years. Prospect watch for the Toronto Blue Jays. They got the 17th ranked farm system in the big, so kind of right in the middle of the pack. And their prospect to watch is this guy right here, Ricky Tiedemann, or Tiedemann. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that. Maybe one of those two is correct. He's the 26th ranked prospect on average. He was actually a third round pick out of JUCO, so not quite, not one of these guys. Most of these guys we've talked about have been like these really high picks, top of the first round, all the pedigree in the world. This is a guy that came out of junior college. I think he forego going to a full 4-year school. I can't remember where he had committed to, but then he decided to do the JUCO route and ended up getting drafted out of JUCO. Big left-handed pitcher here, an absolute strikeout machine. And I guess, before we even get into his strikeout machine, gotta say he's got this killer ponytail. I mean, just look at that ponytail on his first Bowman card here. Don't think he has it anymore. I think I saw some pictures of him doing the recent research, and I don't think I saw the ponytail. But the ponytail when he first came out, and then these are it was just absolutely killer. I'm not a big ponytail guy by any stretch, but look at that thing. It's absolutely awesome. So, like I said, he is a strikeout machine as far as strikeout machines go. He's got a really solid pitch mix overall, but he's got an elite fastball change-up combo. And so many of these guys who are these big strikeout pitchers who just mow lineups down with the strikeout tend to have these fastball changeup combinations that are just on an elite level. He's got a 13 strikeout per 9 inning ratio going in the minor leagues. I mean, everything about this guy has been pretty impressive. Like I said, big left-handed pitcher. I think one more good year in the minor leagues of development, and he's going to be in the Jays rotation. I think he cracks the Jays rotation next year. Maybe not quite this year. Maybe injuries or something force him into action. But I think with one more really good year at the minor league level, this is a guy who's going to burst onto the scene in 2024, and people are going to know his name for sure. All right, bounce back candidate for the Jays. This one seemed fairly self-evident to me as well, and that's Jose Barrios. So before last season, Barrios was one of the just most reliable starting pitchers and solid starting pitchers in all of the majors. So putting 2020 aside, in the last three full seasons outside of 2020, he pitched 192 innings, 200 innings, 192 innings. Good ERAs, good performance, eats up innings. Then last year, it just fell apart in Toronto. He had a 5.32 ERA, just completely fell off a cliff. He was having command problems that was obviously leading to a lot of these issues. It seems like he needs just a slight adjustment to bring him back to that Barrios of old, who was one of the most sought after pitchers in the American League as far as the trade market went when he was on the market from the Twins, and just one of the best all-around pitchers in the American League. So it seems like he might be making that adjustment. Obviously, time will tell. The Rogers Center is a bit of a hitter's park. It's not the easiest to pitch in, definitely compared to Minnesota, but I think this guy can get back to that status, and frankly, the Jays are going to need him to if this team intends on competing with the Yankees for this division. All right, over under 92.5 wins. They won 92 last year, so they probably slightly underachieved compared to where they kind of were projected. Like I mentioned, they were a very popular, sexy pick for the East last year, definitely over the Yankees on most people's projections. I think that they're going to give it a run this year. Though they're a really good team. They're a good young team. If the pitching holds up, if the guys stay healthy, I certainly believe that this team could be really good and give the Yankees a run for their money. They'll ride Vladimir Guerrero, Springer, Bichette. I'm sure there's even some other big bat that I'm just forgetting or missing in that lineup, and they're just Matt Chapman, really good all around team, and they have some solid pitching. I think that they have a chance to certainly go over 92 to do better than they did last year, and they're going to give the Yankees a run. All right, closing it out with the New York Yankees. So if anyone's made it this far, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching these. I had a lot of fun doing this series. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. All that jazz. But we are now going to get into the New York Yankees as the finale. My team, talk about them all the time. Huge Yankee fanatic, huge Yankee collector. Expecting big things out of them this year. So let's give this roster a look. All right, in the offseason, Yankees made, I would say, one really big move. Well, more than one. We'll get to that in a second. But the biggest one was adding Carlos Rodon. So this is a pretty cool, actually, Donruss 4 out of 10 artist proof gold. So too bad it's a Donruss, but a really cool low numbered card of Carlos Rodon. So huge addition for the Yankees in my estimation, in my opinion. They really needed to solidify that number 2 spot in the rotation behind Cole. Severino and Nestor Cortez are great. I love them both. But they needed that second guy. They needed that second horse. He's battling a little bit of an injury right now, but he should be back sometime in April. They said he was throwing bullpens. He looked good. They're not really worried about it. I'm fine with them managing his workload. They need him in October. When they get into a big series and they have Cole and Rodon and then the rest of those guys to follow suit, I mean, they needed that second anchor, and Rodon absolutely gives them that. I loved that signing. I really, really did. They also added Tommy Kahnle, so a relief pitcher, giving them a little bullpen depth. The guy that used to be here left, now is back. And then they re-signed Judge. Huge thing to do there. I mean, my favorite player in the world. Looked like he might be going to the Giants. Got really nervous when that was happening. But it turns out he did come back to the Yankees. And then they also re-signed Anthony Rizzo, which is a great addition. Guy's a great clubhouse presence. He's been awesome for the Yankees, both on the field and off. I think that was an absolute must for them in the short term to bring him back. Loss aside, they lost Andrew Benintendi, who they only had for like 5 seconds last year before he got hurt after the trade deadline. Not a huge believer in him anyhow. I mentioned that in my White Sox preview. Jameson Taillon, Matt Carpenter, who was just kind of a stopgap last year. Chad Green, who we just talked about. Aroldis Chapman went over to the Royals. His tenure with the Yankees kind of ended poorly. Zach Britton is still unsigned. Marwin Gonzalez, and then Louis Litke is gone. He was a relief pitcher with the team. Yankee stud. I mean, duh, right? Like, duh. Who else would it be? It is Aaron Judge, the guy, the best player in the American League. I mean, I guess you could say Shohei Ohtani, but to me, if you're looking at just last year, it was Judge. This is a beautiful rookie autograph, color match, number to 150, blue refractor out of Topps Finest. Picked this up off of one of the guys in the LSU Maniac group sometime last year, maybe even before that. Before he went crazy, the price was, expensive then, and it's probably even way more expensive now, but this is probably one of my favorite cards in my entire collection, if not one of the best cards in my entire collection. But, I mean, I could go on and on about this guy for an hour. I'm not going to go, recap how phenomenal of a season he had last year, the 62 home runs, everything about it, betting on himself, the walk year, the WAR, all the stuff that he did, winning the MVP. Everyone knows what he did last year, but it's just so phenomenal. This guy's going to be a Yankee for life. He's the new Yankee captain. He finds himself in the conversation with, the guys like Gehrig and Munson and Mattingly and Jeter. I mean, just like what company? And he couldn't be a more deserving guy. I mean, he was a guy I believed in from the beginning. A lot of Yankee fans were down on him early. He's too big. He's never going to be able to cover the strike zone. He's too tall. He's going to strike out too much. He's never going to be consistent. He's going to break down early. And look at where we are. I mean, he's basically the face of baseball. He's the guy. And I'm just so glad that, they stuck it out with him. I'm glad that he kind of proved me right, that the guy I believed in panned out this way. But, like I said, I could talk about him for an hour straight. The one thing I will note that I think is pretty interesting is that even despite missing some time here and there in the past, handful of years, obviously outside of last year, last year, the incredible performance, the 10 point whatever or 11 point whatever WAR that he accumulated is a big factor in this. But if you look back to 2017 when he had that monster rookie season where he hit 50 home runs, so from 2017 through last year, no player in Major League Baseball, including Shohei Ohtani, doing it on both sides of the ball, adding both of what he does, pitching and hitting, has accumulated more wins above replacement than Aaron Judge. Truly remarkable. I see no reason that this guy's going to start slowing down. He can play all three outfield positions. The Yankees are going to move him around based on need. He's a trooper. He's a true captain, and I just absolutely love the guy. Star of my squad. So thrilled to have him back. All right, Yankees dud. Sadly, can't believe I have to talk about this guy. Can't believe I have one of his base cards in a top loader, but it's for the video. I couldn't find his rookie card. I know I have one somewhere, but I just couldn't find it. And whatever, because he's a bit of a dud. It's Aaron Hicks. I mean, I also have written down here in my notes, also duh. So I wrote duh for Judge being the star, but also duh for Aaron Hicks being the dud. I mean, the ship probably sailed like 2-3 years ago with this guy, that he was, on the dud list. He's just gotten kind of worse and worse. He seems to fool us like every year, where he has like this like little stretch where he looks like, oh, maybe Hicks is back. This is the guy that, Cashman gave the extension to, and this is what they saw in him all along. And sometimes the swing from the left side looks kind of like Griffey, and it's just like he always tricks us. And I think everyone is just done being fooled. It's really crazy to believe that he's actually been with the Yankees since 2016. It's been so long. Just like I can't believe this guy's still just like hanging around. He's probably going to get a bunch of at bats though with this team. I mean, Bader's out. He's probably going to play a bunch of left field. He might play a little bit of center field, but he's just a disappointment over and over and over again. I think his his head isn't in it. I don't know what it is. He's always hurt. He always underperforms offensively. I've watched him in too many games just let like easy fly balls fall in. He seems to just like have no clue what to do on fly balls anymore. It's just rough. It's really tough. I know he's supposed to be a pretty good golfer, so maybe he could like take up golf. That would be pretty sweet, but I don't think that that's going to happen. So hopefully they kind of send him the way of Jacoby Ellsbury one of these days. All right, prospect watch. 14th ranked farm system according to Keith Law. So again, middle of the pack. And the guy to note here, it's Anthony Volpe all the way. I mean, I mentioned him a little bit earlier when we were talking about top shortstops. He's the 9th ranked prospect on average overall. He's the top rated shortstop in baseball amongst prospects. This kid is just blowing the doors off of spring training. Everything he does is right. He's impressing everyone. Everyone in Yankee land's talking about him. All the top brass is praising him. The manager's praising him. Judge is praising him. Everyone is chomping at the bit for this guy. He has a chance to make the Yankees opening day roster as their starting shortstop at 21 years old. He's not even going to be 21, not even going to be 22 yet on opening day. Won't be 22 until later in April. And it just looks like we finally have the heir apparent to Derek Jeter. They've bounced around from a few guys, Didi, obviously IKF, a few other, guys here and there in the past few years, but this finally looks like we've got the guy, the homegrown local boy from Del Barton up in North Jersey, first round pick. He's been really good in the minors. He's, like I said, he's dominating this spring. He looks like the full package. He's got the speed. He's got some pop in his bat. I saw somebody compare him to Dustin Pedroia. I think he's probably not quite the average hitter that Pedroia was. Pedroia was a 300 hitter. But this guy's going to have more power. He's going to steal more bases. I think he's going to be a 20 home run guy, maybe a 25 home run guy. Pedroia wasn't that. He was in the teens. Pedroia wasn't a 50 stolen base guy. This guy stole 50 bases last year in the minor leagues. So, I mean, at the major league level, you're talking about a leadoff hitter who's probably stealing 40-something bags. I mean, I would sign up right now for Dustin Pedroia's career. He had a really good, productive career. But I think Volpe has a much higher ceiling than that if all pans out. So, I'm very high on this guy. I don't know if he actually breaks camp with the team. I think he could use a little bit more time at AAA. You also want to get that extra year of control later on of a guy's prime. I think that that's particularly valuable. I know that not all fans agree with that, but really special player. So I'm really looking forward to whenever he finally does get that chance, because once he takes over at shortstop, there's no turning back. All right, bounce back candidate. It's going to be Giancarlo Stanton for me. This is a pretty cool looking X-Fractor card from, this is I think 2018. Yeah, 2018 Topps Chrome. Really nice looking X-Fractor. This is another guy who is a former MVP. He won an MVP back with the Marlins before he came over to the Yankees, who, has mainly been pretty productive, but runs into injury problems just constantly. And it's probably just because he's so like bulky and jacked and ripped that he just like gets all these weird little injuries that just nag him and ail him. But when he plays, I mean, he's pretty much a stud with the exception of, a portion of last year. So, last year he, again, missed a bunch of time, but he had a pretty bad slash line. He had 211, he had a 297 on-base percentage, horrible, a 462 slugging percentage. He's always got to be like a over 500 slugging percentage guy. But he did all that with still hitting 31 homers in just the 110 games that he played. So, if he plays a full season, that's another 40-plus, 45 home run season. It's just he can't stay on the damn field. So, he's among the most elite exit velocity guys in the majors. He averages 95 on his exit velocity. And he hits the ball so freaking hard, but somehow, some way, he had a BABIP of 227 last year. Unspeakably low. I mean, just unbelievably low batting average on balls in play. I mean, he has a career BABIP average of 314. So he was basically 90 points below his league average, and 75 points below the league average, below his career average, and 75 points below the league average. I think that there was a lot of bad luck involved. He still strikes out a ton. He's always going to do that, but I think if this guy could put a healthy season together, we're going to see him hit 40 home runs for the first time since he became a Yankee. He hasn't hit 40 home runs since he was with Miami Marlins, but that was mainly because he just misses so much time. So definitely a guy I believe in. I'm hoping for a really healthy season. If you get Giancarlo going and you get him healthy for a whole year and you get him running hot like he tends to do in the postseason and other things, watch out, because this guy is going to put together a monster year. All right, sleeper candidate. To close this out, it's Luis Severino. We haven't seen a full season from Sevy either since 2018. And in that 2018 season, he was really good. Just like he was really good in 2017. The 2 full seasons he put together, he was tremendous. The problem is he, got hurt in 19, and then he was out for pretty much all 20 with, the COVID season. He was continuing to come back from the injuries in 2021. He came back last year. He was strong when he pitched, but then he missed some time again. I mean, same thing. He got back on the shelf. I think he was kind of pissed off about it. I think he thought that he should have came back earlier, but they were being overly cautious with him. But when he pitched, he was really good. But the thing about this year that makes it a little different, this year's a walk year. He's 29 years old. He's trying to get that big contract. He's probably seeing dollar signs, whether it's with the Yankees or otherwise. We know what walk years do to guys. So, cross your fingers, hope for a full season, because if he is, this is a guy who's slotting in 3 and 4 in the rotation. Him and Nestor are the 3-4 guys. He has the potential to pitch like an ace. So if you get 30 starts out of him at ace caliber out of your 3 or 4 slot, I mean, that's really, really good. So, I'm confident in how he can produce if he's on the field. The key for him, similar to with Stanton, is simply health. All right, over, under, and then we're going to wrap this up and get out of here. Can't believe this one went for almost an hour. 95.5 wins is the over, under. They won 99 games last year. I think it'll come as no surprise. I'm going to go with the over. I think they're still the favorite to win the division. I think the Jays are going to push them a little bit. They should have easily won 100 games last year, if not for just a horrible stretch in August. But I feel like the team got better. I feel like the addition of Rodon, solidifying Judge's place here, you get a little bit of health out of Stanton and Severino. You get a little bit of youth shot in the arm with guys like Volpe coming up at some point, Peraza, as well as Cabrera. You get maybe a little healthier Anthony Rizzo season. All in all, I really like this team this year. I think that they're going to challenge for a World Series. I think that they certainly can win this division. It's all going to come down to health like it always does. But I am all in on the over of 95.5. I don't think they got worse from last year. I think that they, in fact, got better. All right, folks. Can't believe this went on for almost an hour. I knew that this was going to happen. The AL East being my hometown division, I knew I was going to talk the most about this one. I hope you enjoyed this content. Let me know if you like this kind of stuff. I know it's a bit long form. I know it's not for everyone. I know not everyone watches this stuff when it's so long, but I do really enjoy making it. So I hope you guys, those of you who do watch, do like it. I'm going to come back next week, probably with a full season picks and predictions video, hoping it's not going to be as long as some of this stuff, but maybe on like the morning of opening day, put out my World Series pick and my award winners and maybe just some hot takes and predictions for the year. So we'll do that. Before that, I'm going to do an SGC video showing off some slabs and an upcoming submission, all the cards that I'm going to be sending in. And then, we're going to get back to the card ripping and all that fun stuff that everyone in this community loves the most in the subsequent weeks as baseball season gets underway. Happy baseball season, guys. I'm really excited for this year. I'm so happy baseball's back. I always chomp at the bit and just, sit basically, who's the famous quote from maybe Roger Hornsby. I'm sitting in the winter. I sit and look out the window and wait for baseball season. I'm that guy. I love it. I love everything about it. And I just can't wait for the season to start next week. All right, folks, I won't keep it here any longer. Like, comment, subscribe. Really appreciate the support as always. And the best is yet to come. Thanks a lot and take care.